I,
Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today it is Coach Natalie and I back with part two of our coaching series. Last week, we talked through the mistakes keeping most coaches stuck, basically why your clients in business aren't progressing, and really chatted through, basically I personally had a large influx of newer coaches on my roster lately, and just conversations with a lot of coaches in general more and more over the years that becomes more common. And lots of chats specifically centered around kind of how we got to where we are, coaches wanting to kind of take on that journey themselves. How do I better help my clients? How do we grow our business, etc. So this last episode was very focused on coaches in the audience, and this one will be the same. And really, we just talked through some personal reflections and experiences, lessons we've learned along the way, things that we've done as a team to really help ourselves grow, and things we see coaching a lot of other coaches. And basically, to summarize that, the mistakes we see and the things to focus on were, as far as mistakes go, oftentimes investing in business coaching and marketing before you were excellent at coaching yourself, not prioritizing your own physical and mental health, like taking care of yourself in both regards, not investing heavily in your education, again, focusing more on kind of the business development or like trying to scale before we're actually good at the thing. So that's really what we talked about last week. This week, I want to actually kind of talk through our own journeys a little bit more and chat about the courses, mentors, and experiences that have helped us grow the most as coaches, because I think this will be a little bit more tangible. Last week was really around a lot of the like, hey, here's mistakes to avoid. But I think this will actually give a lot of takeaways as far as, okay, if I do want to grow more in this realm, here's like specific things I could do, pursue, look into. Anything else to add there?
I do get asked a lot, like what certifications I have, so to speak, like from some of the coaches. Actually, a client of mine who wanting to be a coach herself recently asked me, like, "Hey, are these courses worth it? Like, what do you think about this?" And so we were chatting a little bit, kind of through like what we're going to chat about today. But this is a question that comes up a lot with a lot of
Hmm.
newer coaches or coaches looking to kind of like expand their skill set or just like looking for a place to start. So I hope that this will be a good resource and will be something helpful. I think there's going to be some discussion along the way today about, things that helped and things that maybe we thought might help that didn't. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think it'll be very helpful. Um, Really, I would say most certifications have left me wanting a lot more and feeling like there was still such a big gap. And that's like one of the themes she'll definitely take away from this is like coaches, one-on-one mentors guiding you through specific client situations. Being coached through those situations yourself, I think as a coach is the best way to learn. I do find
Yeah.
people are, go ahead.
I was just saying that the kind of gist of the conversation we had was, I don't want to knock certifications because it depends on where you are in your journey. I think certifications can be really helpful for putting your foot in the door,
Yeah.
depending on what you're trying to do. And obviously, for example, if your goal is to be an in-person personal trainer, you will have to have a certification to work at it like a gym.
Right.
But I think for a lot of coaches starting out, like that don't have any certs and they don't have any clients, like that can be a good foot in the door. And perhaps that's, a conversation for another time, but that was kind of the gist of the conversation I had recently. And it's
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I keep cutting you off.
no, no, no. I feel like you just don't think anything I say is important. I think that's what it is.
I'm so excited about what you're saying that I want to contribute my thoughts. No, I fully agree. And I don't want to take this as like I don't know, I don't follow them anymore. So I don't know if it's still out there or not. But for a while there was like this business coaching group who was putting out a lot of like, you don't need a certification. Like you know
Mm.
more than your clients. So why shouldn't you be confident in yourself as a coach? And like, I don't know if you ever feel super confident as a coach, but I'm definitely not promoting that, like, because it almost kind of fosters a just like, well, I know enough already. And
Right,
you
right.
probably don't, honestly. So, anyways, I think really the best way to kind of go about this is literally just talk through chronological order, our journeys, again, like the different certifications, things of that nature that we've invested in. I think this will be a fun chat. I'll start with mine. Um,
That way you think it's going to be fun.
yes, because I'm going to talk about myself a huge amount. No, that normally makes me super uncomfortable. Um, Good thing it's not Andrea and I doing this because we're both the same way. Um, but just kind of talk through my journey. And you've been a huge part of this. And you've been like in on so many of these things, which I'm sure you'll have a lot to contribute there. And then we can kind of get into yours as well.
Mhm.
Sound good?
Sounds
All
like
right.
it.
So I started personal training in 2014. So we are over 10 years deep now. That's when I started working with people. I got certified, what, May of 2014 through NASM. I remember not like I had been super into training for a very long time. By that point, I was like obsessed with like the bodybuilding.com forums, T Nation, like all the blogs and stuff like that. It's funny how different of a time it was. Like it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was just like a completely different time as far as like how you learn. Like Instagram, I don't think you could even like upload videos on Instagram yet. And everybody is like Instagrams have those weird little like the borders. Do you remember those? Do you know what I'm talking about?
How old are you? Just kidding.
31. I am 31. How that is an ironic question
I
coming from you.
know. Yeah, no, it was a different time for sure. I mean, I think that's the nature though of just technology is things happen really fast. And then
Yeah.
like I'm sure we'll kind of get into this through your evolution, but like the COVID years, of course, like sped everything up to like such an insane degree in terms of just like evolution of the industry. But
Yeah.
anyways, sorry.
Yeah. No, it is funny to like I feel like at the time I thought it was kind of late to like coaching online, but it's like in retrospect, we were actually a lot earlier than I thought. But I think that is a very important like one conversation I have with a lot of coaches. Like there's a lot of coaches on our team. One of Andrea's clients, she's awesome, great coach. Love the way she pushes herself, the way she shows up. But she was chatting about like I'm frustrated because I feel like I'm having a hard time signing up clients and people don't seem to like see the value in it. And I was like, how long have you been doing this for? She's like, I'm in my first year. It's like, it just takes a long time, a lot longer than we want. Um, but again, started in 2014. I remember going into my certification, like I was obsessed with training. I felt like I knew a lot about it, but at the same time, I felt like I had no idea how to train somebody. Got my NASM certification, and I remember being like, wait, that's it? I still don't have any better idea of how to like hurt someone. I know like the like lumbar, thoracic, et cetera, regions of the spine. I know like this is what someone's like blood pressure should be, but I still have no idea like how do I actually coach someone. So feeling pretty lost in that. Kind of just like stumbled my way through my first couple of years of coaching. Really, I at the time I wasn't very good at all at had a completely different mindset, or I just like didn't realize you could like hire and invest in people, and like there were like so many good resources out there to like grow and expand as a coach. So it was really just like I was just constantly like listening to podcasts. I was constantly on YouTube. I stumbled across one thing that was tremendously helpful for me was Eric Trexler, not Eric Trexler, Eric Helms, Muscle and Strength Pyramids. I believe it was before the books came out, and he just had these YouTube videos like working through like the nutrition hierarchy and like how that works. And that was so incredibly helpful for me in like understanding how to apply nutrition, all these concepts. But really like my first investment was March 2017. I hired a business coach. Um, so really here I made the mistake that I mentioned last episode. And I invested, so this is speaking from a place of experience. I invested in business coaching and I was like trying to like quote unquote scale before I was actually even good at coaching. So I mean, I started coaching in 2014, but like from the start, from like years before that, actually my intention was somehow I'm going to coach people online. So this was kind of like me, like, okay, I've coached people for a couple of years. I've worked with a lot of people in person. I was like running 50, 60 sessions a week very consistently. So from here, I want to start building the online side of things. So that was the plan. Um, and I really wanted to learn how to actually coach people online. Like, what does the delivery look like? Ultimately, I mostly like we worked through a lot of like, here's like what your copywriting should look like for sales. It was basically sales. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was basically just teaching me sales. Like, here's like what your lead magnets and like your email sequences, et cetera, should look like, which were helpful things to learn, but really not what I needed at the time. Like, I did get a good, like, there was a small circle of like, I started putting out there that I coach people online, like 10, 15 people who signed up, and it was like, oh, this is crazy. Because in that first like month, like it was a crazy difference from where I was prior. But I didn't know how to coach them well. The service really sucked. So people would only stick around for like a month or two and then they left. But it did like I invested in myself. It was a scary investment. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. So it kind of forced me to just start taking action. Then October 2017, I started writing for Mind Pump, which was again at the time, like when I was first kind of getting into it, had a lot of good information as far as like for people who are brand new to this, how do you train them? I haven't listened to their podcast in quite a while, so I'm not sure what they're about now, but at the time it was very, very helpful for me. Um, but really for me, this was like, hey, I look up to these guys. I respect what they've done. I kind of want to be connected with them. And it was a big investment of time. Basically, I was writing 2 blogs per week for them rather than money. And then in exchange for that, Sal from Mind Pump was going to kind of like help me understand like how do I grow, how do I become better as a coach, how do I like grow the online coaching side of things. And give me some good insight into like how do you improve my social media and things like that. It wasn't like a like in-depth mentorship. I hopped on like a call or two with him and he gave me some like pointers here and there. But I don't think they really had like been coaching anyone online either. So it was more so just like, hey, from a social media perspective, et cetera, here's like how you can grow and improve there. Now I remember like for me, this is when I first started to realize that it was going to take a lot longer than I expected to kind of get to where I wanted to be. Because Mind Pump like is very popular now. I think they're still like the number one fitness podcast, but they were at the time as well, right? It wasn't as saturated as it is now. And I remember like, holy shit, this is huge. I'm gonna be on their website like twice a week. They're gonna be like talking about me on their podcast, et cetera. And I'm just gonna blow up, right? I remember like the owner of our gyms had like transitioned ownership. And I was trying to sell the owners at the time on this idea that I was gonna be building like my business alongside coaching people there and like provided my whole business plan. It was like a year from now, how I was gonna have like 100,000 followers on Instagram and all this stuff because of this thing, which I mean, now it's, I don't even know if I'm at 10K now and it's like 8 years later. But anyways, I remember like thinking like my first blog went out. It's like, all right, this is it. I've made it. Like I'm gonna have a full roster of clients overnight. It's all gonna blow up. And then it was like just nothing really like happened. I just kind of the same as it was before, just people like slowly trickled in and started following. But it was a good experience in that. And I did that for what, like a year, I think. Really good experience in that just, I mean, it kind of forced me to take action and started to really force me to put myself out there. One of the things Sal told me was like, all right, dude, you need to start posting every day on Instagram. I'm watching, I'm gonna hold you accountable to this. And that did really like kind of get me started on that side of things, which was also very helpful. Where I haven't, I mean, I posted every day since then. So was very helpful on that front. And again, just like the power of consistency and putting myself out there. October 2017, I took my precision nutrition level 1 certification, my first nutrition certification. Pretty similar to the NASM cert, where I was kind of like I do like precision nutrition has some helpful guidelines for like people who are, and I don't know what they're like. I don't know if the course has changed a lot since then. Very like basics, like basic understanding of macros, but I felt like things I had already kind of like learned and knew from the blog. So it was again kind of like I don't really feel like I have a better understanding of how I coach people with nutrition. And this was really my like at the time the struggle was like, okay, how do I actually, there's a disconnect here, right? Like people show up with me at the gym, but people online, I'm like really struggling to help them. I know the nutrition for both these groups of clients is the biggest missing link, but I don't know how to like coach them through this. And in essence, like I didn't realize at the time part of it was just I didn't understand how to deliver well. Like how to deliver that, how do I communicate those things, what my systems were like. But I just like felt pretty lost after that as well. Feel free to jump in whenever if you have anything that you want to add here because I feel like I'm kind of just rambling. Makes me self-conscious if I do this for too long. So June, go
Ben,
ahead.
I'll chime in on the precision nutrition because that's a certification I also have.
Mhm.
So as opposed to like me rehashing later. Now I did it after you. I did it several years ago, like 2020, something like that. And so I can't speak to what it was like when you did it, because I assume like any business they've evolved and they have like changed some things, I hope, to make things like more relevant. But I agree. Like no certification is. I don't think there's any certification that you're going to take and be like, I immediately know all of this and how to apply it in the real world. But I think precision nutrition actually is a pretty good way in
Yeah.
for nutrition. I was similar in that, like, I knew macros. Like I knew how to manipulate nutrition, But
Mhm.
what I liked about them is they did get into some of the science. So it kind of brought some of that back, talking about like structure of a cell and all that good stuff. And then I do like the fact, and this is where maybe I don't know if it was the same back when you did it, but they do have a strong emphasis on like their whole like biopsychosocial thing. Like they have a whole like, how does this actually apply to someone? Like you need to kind of meet
Yeah,
where they're at, start at their level. You need to take into
I
account.
did like that as well.
Yeah, and they weren't just like, hey, you just need to know the X's and O's of nutrition. I felt like they were pretty good at 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 putting in there like at every opportunity, like, okay, but you also need to figure out like how this applies, and like you need to take this person's life into account and their like culture where
Yeah.
they live, and and that's helpful framework, I think. So
Yeah, I don't want to sound too negative about that. I would agree.
yeah, I think as a jumping off point, if you're interested in coaching nutrition, that's actually something that I have recommended to people. Depending on where your skill set lies, like where your knowledge really is there. Um, and this is again maybe another topic, but there is an air of like legitimacy, when speaking to general population who wants to know like, hey, why should I hire you? Like, are you certified? What do and like when you're just starting out and you don't have clients, you don't have a proof of concept. So you don't
Mhm.
have you don't have a portfolio of client results. It's like, well, hey, like I don't really need a cert because like here's all the results I have. Like you don't have that yet.
Yeah.
So general population doesn't necessarily understand this industry the way that coaches might. It's kind of like what we care about is getting results. Like, do you have proof of concept? Can you deliver results? Can you do so with the client's health in mind? And like all of these things. But when you're speaking to someone like a lifestyle client who really doesn't know that much, like, hey, why should I hire you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a foot in the door, which is what I started out this episode by saying.
Yeah.
So my two
I,
cents.
I fully agree. I think it really helped me start to consider, and I do feel like I only spoke on like, I don't necessarily feel hugely more confident in my ability to coach nutrition, but you're right. It definitely got me to start considering more the person in front of me, not just, hey, we're going to use the same nutrition approach with everyone. And I
Right.
do think they do a very good job with that. So, from there, June 2018. I hired Cody McBroom, who I think that I'm not sure actually these days, but for a very long time in our audience has had quite a bit of overlap. This was a huge changing point for me. He was the first coach that I hired, and really like this led to like such a. I feel like things just started changing so quickly around the same time. Um, I felt like up to this point, I mean, at this point, I was already 4 years in. I had just passed my 4 year mark as a coach, but I felt like I had still like kind of struggled to get anyone all that impressive of results, right? I felt like I hadn't really grown that much as a coach for being someone who had done this for 4 years. Like the reputation I was trying to build wasn't growing. I posted lots of content. No one really wanted to work with me online. Outside of those first like that like quick bubble that I kind of burst through. Past that, I was really struggling to like grow on that front. It's also funny how at the time I felt like I knew everything because like I understood calorie deficits. Hey, you need a calorie deficit for fat loss. And it was like if you're not losing, you're not on a calorie deficit, right? And that's like I just felt like I knew. It's funny to think about how I felt like I knew so much more than I know now. Or like the very basics of the training program. And I like had listened to some podcast, right? And I kind of felt like at the time, like I have such a huge amount of knowledge. Gotta just be a matter of time before like all this takes off. My clients start crushing it, business really grows, etc. But yeah, it was like by this point, I was just getting sick of, okay, I feel like I'm stagnant. I don't feel like I've really grown. Like I've been like listening to the podcast, watching the YouTube videos, following these people on Instagram, and it's not getting me where I want to be. So I need to hire my own coach. And then this was very helpful because I quickly realized my personal standards were way too low to help my clients the way that they deserved. I'd really like never taken my physique past average until this point. And I told myself at the time, like, it doesn't really matter. It makes me more relatable. Like, I don't really track my macros on the weekends either. Like, I'd just go get drunk and like eat a bunch of wings, etc. I remember one time I was like at the bar and I was just hammered and I was just chowing down on wings. And one of my clients came up to me and she's like, "What is my trainer eating?" And I was like, "Oh." Not that there's
The
anything wrong with
worst.
that, but I had this girl specifically, it was like she was prepping for her wedding, and I like kept being like, dude, you're not consistent enough with your nutrition. Then I was like, I'm not setting the best example here. Um, but again, that's really what I was like at the time. I was like, yeah, it just makes me more relatable. But really, it did make me feel like an imposter because I was trying to help these people accomplish this thing. Like, I had never taken my physique specifically, like when you're starting off as a coach or early on, you're typically working with people who primarily want fat loss. I had never taken myself to a position that was as lean as a lot of my clients wanted to get, right? So how could I help them get there when I was still like, I hadn't been able to get myself there and I wasn't really super clear on how to go about it. Like I understood, yes, calorie deficit, I understood macros, but I never actually made it happen. So over the next year, I pushed my physique so much further than I ever had, culminated in a photo shoot. And really, it was again just like I'm sick of this, dude. Like all this is changing. I feel like I've been stuck in the same place for like 4 years, and this is not like who I'm gonna be anymore. It's time for me to like level up. I'm done with the like I'm the college, like I'm still in college, and I'm just like getting drunk, and like this is my priorities. Like this isn't for me anymore, right? And it's time to change and grow. So it was a very big shift, and like it's like all this. It's I am not gonna spend another day like feeling like I don't practice what I preach. So really went all in on that, and again, really saw it right away. Like wow, I could hold myself to such a higher standard, which is funny because again, it's like a the people who not I love the people I was around before, but it wasn't like no one in my circle before this was really like I was always the one who was like into fitness, right? So like I was more dialed in with my nutrition than anyone else. I never missed my training. No one else like really did that. And I see this a lot with like a lot of newer coaches as well with like, and this is where I was, where my perception of how well I was managing things was like, dude, I do this better than like anyone else I know in person.
Mm.
But it's funny, it was funny to see like, oh wow. And I've had multiple experiences like this where it's like, oh wow, there's like a whole new level here that I could be doing things at that I'm not yet. Did you have something
I
to say there?
Yeah, I do want to jump in there. First of all, they say if you're like, big fish in a small pond, you need a bigger pond.
I'm the
So there's
biggest fish in this pond.
that. But the other thing is to kind of tack on to what I was speaking to earlier about like precision nutrition and like proof of concept. If you're a new coach and you don't yet have a body of work or that proof of concept, use yourself as an asset here.
Oh
So if
yeah.
you don't have a portfolio of client results, you don't have people that you are currently working with, you have yourself. And we could get into the whole discussion about like, hey, do we think that like trainers need to look the part? And that's a whole other conversation. But my point is if you're a newer coach and you want to get into this, you want this to be your profession, you don't have a portfolio, body of work, proof of concept, and you don't even have proof of concept with yourself, you're really working against yourself here. So like starting with your own physique is a really solid place to start. If you are just looking to get started, like do this with yourself. Hire a coach, which I know we talk about all the time. Or like get yourself there first. Because you having that proof of concept in it with yourself is going to be a selling point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like if you like to the point that you're making right now, if you've never pushed yourself, or like if you're trying to coach people through fat loss and you've never done it, you've never gotten lean, you've never built muscle, why why should someone trust you? Like kind of it makes sense to me.
Why do you expect yourself to be successful, like coaching other people through it?
Right.
And it's a fine line, right? Like I will admit I've never had a menstrual cycle, but I've helped clients get their
Really?
menstrual cycles back. Yes. So there's of course there are caveats here, but and
For
it's
sure. And
it
everyone starts somewhere. We did too.
right,
Like everyone starts somewhere, and that's important. But I'm saying like these are some starting points for you.
correct.
Like if you're sitting there scratching your head, like, why is this not happening for me? Here's some low-hanging fruit.
But I really remember like when I started working with Cody and just seeing because I wanted to coach people online. I had never been coached myself. I had never really like passed the apps and the like again different time like the programs on T Nation and bodybuilding.com. Like I had never actually seen like what being coached could actually look like. And I
And
feel
that's
like in
not
the
coaching, right? I mean, those
right,
forums
it's
are
not.
great, like tons of information, but like that's just information. That's not
Yeah,
application.
right. It's honestly like a lot of guys who are, it was like a lot of guys who were on, I didn't realize, like, I remember I was on a forum called, like, it was called Anabolic Minds. And I didn't actually realize at the time there was like, this is like a PED forum. There was like all these, but it is so funny to think about now. Um,
Like, wow, these people
anyways,
act.
yeah, these guys are so jacked. Like, why is their
What am
training
I
working so much
missing?
better for them? Yeah. Anyways, it was crazy to see how much like I felt like in the first like couple months, just seeing that, like, oh wow, here's how you can deliver this, here's how you communicate these things, here's like a system we can use to make this so much more clear for our clients. Like I felt like in the first couple months there, like my coaching leveled up more than I had over the like 4 years prior to that. I learned so much about physique development. I really learned being coached through the process how to apply it. I was really coaching from a place of experience, not just I read about this on Instagram or heard about it on a podcast. And really, I found like the standard my clients started to hold themselves to as they saw what I was doing changed. And I think this is really where I kind of started to understand okay, as a coach, you are a leader. And to a large degree, your client's mindset, habits, and standards are going to reflect your own. And that's a I just so true across the board. Like even with the like importance of prioritizing yourself, like we talked about in the last episode, if you are so stressed out by your coaching and your clients that you actually like miss your training constantly, your clients are going to do the same thing. It's weird how this works. If you're always just stressed in general, if your clients are even more stressed, right? Like it's funny how much that does impact it. So it is very important to again take care of yourself. But in general, like I think there's kind of like I don't know how to best put numbers on this, but I would say like most of your clients, their like ceiling for results will be something like 10 to 15% below the best achieved. Does that make sense? You kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, but I don't know if it's
Are
even
those
just like the
numbers true
standard.
though? Did you?
Oh, I just pulled that out of my ass,
Oh,
but
okay.
you get what I'm saying.
I know I get your point. Yeah.
That's like been my experience where like every time I've taken my physique a lot further, suddenly it's hey, across the board, everyone's getting better results and it levels up. Um, I think you get what I'm saying there. But basically, I don't think a ripped physique makes a great coach, but it's unlikely to be good at coaching someone else to a result you've never achieved yourself. Is the biggest takeaway from that. Anything to throw in there before we continue?
Nope. Agree.
Okay, is this helpful? Is this just boring? I
No,
feel
it's
like
good.
okay, gonna do that to me.
I had to
Yeah,
make you
you can.
sweat. Yeah.
We're just recording this, so okay. Anyways, then from there, again, I kind of continued into a mentorship with Cody, which was also very helpful for me. It was definitely one of the scariest investments I'd made at the time. I had actually left the gym by that point. Um, hadn't really worked out how I had planned. Basically, I was planning on, they kind of presented me with an ultimatum like, hey, can either build the online coaching side of things for us and it's under our name, or you can go do your own thing, but there's no like kind of continue to do what you've been doing. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go do my own thing. And then I thought I was able to take my in-person clients with me and just take them to another gym. Wasn't actually able to do that. It was a whole like looking back, I could have like they were just intimidating me. Like I had refused to sign a non-compete. They're like, well, non-compete is still enforceable because you saw it, and we'll like sue you if you do this and yada yada yada. Which at the time was a very stressful thing for me, but it was honestly the best thing that could happen because it was like within for the next 3 months, really actually a very short non-compete as well, but within the next 3 months for like within a 30-mile radius, you can't train anyone. So forced me to, okay, I've been wanting to do this online thing. I only have like 3 clients right now, but shit, like my back's against the wall. I don't really have another option unless I want to move. So, okay, I have to make this happen. And around that similar time, actually, I again invested in this mentorship with Cody, which was a lot more money than I had. I remember like my second payment to him, my credit card actually like bounced back because I had enough money for it, but I had like just signed up like 2 clients right before that, and then I was able to like pay it off and like, oh cool, we're good. But it was really again like there learned a lot more about the coaching side of things, and just meeting up with all these people who I really looked up to, who I like at the time like had accomplished so much of what I wanted, and seeing like people aren't like special or they don't necessarily have something that I don't. They're just not afraid to put themselves out there again, like even looking back on myself as a coach that time, I didn't deserve to like have what we have, like the sense of coach and company we have today because I wasn't a very good coach. But it was helpful to know like these people who have done this so well already don't like have this missing like trait that I don't have. Just they spent more time doing it. Um, I think those were probably my biggest takeaways from that. Let's see. 2019, I took Joel Jamieson's Energy Systems certification. That seems so long ago now. It was an interesting one. I feel like it does give me really good, like your anaerobic lactic, alactic, etc., like kind of cardio programming. It was really before the like whole zone two craze and things like that. But I feel like from a cardio programming perspective, that was helpful. April 2020 took Mac Nutrition, which is a year-long course. I would say for like from a nutrition coaching perspective, this is probably, I think, the best one out there. It is very, very in depth. I did at the time again, it was like I was taking a lot of certifications because I still like felt like there's like so much that I'm missing and like so much more that I need to know, which really I think like the functional health side of things and understanding that closed that gap a lot more, but I was looking for it in other places. But I feel like Mac Nutrition was very, very good, very in depth. I think again, like by far the best I've seen. Again, it's a big commitment. It is a year-long course, and there's like a just like a three-part exam at the end that is quite like in depth. But it was a great experience. May 2020, started working with Steve Hall. So I worked with Cody up till that time. Then started working with Steve. Spent about a year and a half there. Steve is someone who I learned a lot from. I'm working with him now as well. So obviously enjoy that. But I feel like I really started to like with Steve. Of course, like he's much more in the bodybuilding world. So really started to learn a lot more about programming for hypertrophy. And I don't think I realized this until relatively recently, like how much that influenced the way that I coach. Like before that, I was doing the written check-ins, and then it's like, oh, he's doing these Loom videos. That's really cool. Like I like that. I'm gonna start doing that as well. We're seeing like, oh, he looks over like the way my training is progressing and adjusts things based on that, and like understanding how to do that, like talking through exercise selection, things like that with him. It was really so helpful. Um, August 2020 took the N1 program design course. So N1 Education's program design course. Again, really kind of just digging into the biomechanics side of things. I feel like that was really helpful from an exercise selection perspective. Kind of my thought process, understanding like more lengthened bias movements, more shortened bias movements, how we sequence those. Again, exercise selection as a whole was very helpful on that front. Um, June 2021, I invested in another business coach. So here, this was a really big investment. I think it was like 10 grand for 12 weeks. But I did learn a lot about it was again kind of a almost like when I first started online, I had left the gym, kind of like a, well, this is a lot of money. I better like hustle and make up for it. Um, it did really, I think as much as anything else, like the accountability that I had there, again, like forced me to be okay with like, okay, stop worrying so much about like what is this person on Instagram gonna think of your content, like this pure, just like start putting yourself out there, like talk about your coaching and like actually push to grow. And it was very helpful on that front. I started to learn a lot about leadership and like actually building a team as well. Like Andrea had already joined the team by that point. And I've said this many times, but like the first year that she was there, I just feel so bad because I was terrible at like it was just such a mess. I can't believe she stuck around for as long as she did, but I'm so thankful that she did. But really, like as much as anything, it helped me like kind of understand how to continue to build a team. And then after that 12 weeks was up, I actually invested in another year of coaching, like business coaching with them, which was 33 grand for the year. So it was an expensive year. It was, I think I learned a lot of I think from there, like honestly, a lot of it was things I don't want to do with like how I don't want to build a business, which I actually think is just as helpful with a like, I don't want to like use these sales tactics. I'm not going to like going into the call tell someone you have to give me either yes or no. Or there was like a lot of things where it was like, as much as anything else, I don't want things to be like that. And I'm okay if the business grows slower because I'm not willing to do that, which I'm very glad I stuck to my guns on long term. Um, August 2021, I started working with Alex Bush from Physique Development. Great dude. Kind of just got deeper into the bodybuilding world. At the time, I was really trying to understand again that like in one education model of these different phases of training that they move through, and he really taught me a lot about that. So there's for sure some things that I took away from that. That like exact model isn't really how we approach it now, but it was very helpful. I learned a ton about like program design, exercise selection, Even kind of like the body recomp side of things. And again, just the delivery of coaching. And then at the same time, I was working with Alex, Andrea and I, we started a mentorship with our guy, Brandon DeCruz. Can't go with podcast without talking about our guy. Where really this was again, like as I had mentioned, the like functional health side of things, like understanding blood work, functional nutrition, improving health. Like how do we better help our female clients with like supporting like any like thyroid issues, restoring a menstrual cycle, etc. Felt like there was like such a huge gap in my coaching that okay, he's like one of the smartest people I know. Cool, let's pay him to really help us better understand this. So that was kind of our first like escapade into that world. And I remember at the time just being like, holy shit, I feel so stupid. Like there's just like this whole new world that I know nothing about. I'm so glad though that we invested like so much time and honestly money in that over the last couple of years because it has definitely paid us back, but it did take a very, very long time. And it was so daunting then, especially. And then after that, what January 2022, I think it was a 3 month mentorship with Brandon. And then we started actually mentoring with Alex Bush as well. So kind of just talking through program design, this idea of like training and nutrition synergy, how do we really support those things, working through different client case studies with him, which was a very helpful mentorship also. Then July 2022, I started working with Brandon DeCruz on the coaching front. Which if you've listened to this podcast for a long time, man, I feel like at least once a week for like the entirety of our coaching. Almost Brandon was on. But really, when I hired him, this was another very similar to like the hiring of my first coach. I feel like this was another like big turning point or big time of growth for us. Coincided with like right after this is when we hired you actually, right? And that's again like as you're very aware, business grew a lot like that first couple months, um, where you had like 30 take on like 30 clients in your first month. Um, was a crazy time. But anyways, uh, I remember again, like I told Brandon when I started with him, I wanted to level up the way I handled my own physique development. I remember like the year before we went to you weren't with us when we went to the PEC, were you? No, you weren't with the team
Oh,
yet. Yeah. We went to the PEC and I remember seeing like all these, I'd never really been around bodybuilders before. And it was again another one of those moments where I was like, oh wow, there's a whole new level to this, where there were like all these guys who had like their 6 pack bags with like every single meal. And it's like these dudes aren't like I'm going to Chipotle and these dudes are like, oh, I got my meal right here. I got all my supplements for this meal, etc. Not that you necessarily have to live all the way all the time, but it was like, oh wow. I am not, again, like there's still a lot more that I could be doing if I want better. So I told him I wanted to level up. And that was both like kind of intimidating and exciting for me because at the time I felt like my plate was already very full. And I felt like I was doing things very well relative to my physique goals. But I would say like working with him really completely changed my perception of what being dialed in with my own physique pursuits meant. I had never followed a meal plan before, right? I'd always kind of just like done flexible dieting and I tracked my macros consistently. But hey, if we were traveling, if I wanted to go out to eat, et cetera, be in a fat loss phase or wherever I was, it was like, cool, I'll just kind of guesstimate it. I'll just kind of wing it where okay, we're not going to do that anymore, right? Like we went on a trip around Arizona. We went a couple trips and it was I'm just going to literally pack everything and throw it in a cooler. I am not missing on this meal plan. I'm committed to like just saying that I did this 100%. I want to look back on this phase and know that I didn't miss, right? Basically, we were doing a photo shoot prep and I wanted to like felt like I'd never done the thing 100%. And I had kind of again felt like there was a like inner coaching. I felt like there was a kind of disconnect where clients were coming in and kind of expecting it to be like what someone's perception of being dialed in was so far from like where we needed to be in reality. So I wanted to lead by example and like, hey guys, that's what I was so good about. Like, here's what my food was like today. And Natalie, that's when Natalie first started heckling me on the mustard salad thing. Or like, here's where my steps were today, right? That whole like we don't miss thing, just over and over, like, here's how dialed in we can actually be. And I want to kind of illustrate that to our clients. Even things like I've realized like dates with Katie didn't require me to like have a huge restaurant meal or 3 glasses of wine. I could get the mustard salad, right? I could get that out of my meals out. Or before that, I thought like I wouldn't have time to do 15K steps per day, or like, oh, nobody can realistically do cardio 5 days a week, right? That's just not realistic for anyone. Where this changed so much of that for me, like, oh yeah, I can do all those things. It requires me to be more organized, manage my time better, and quit being a bitch about a lot of these things, honestly. But it's very, very doable, and it's not actually as hard as I was telling myself it was. So basically, I realized I was capable of doing almost everything at a much higher level than before. Um, yeah, I'm talked for a long time, so I'll kind of wrap these last few up quickly. But basically, from there, then we did during this time, a lot of this was during this time, November 2022, we did another functional nutrition mentorship with Jason Theobald. Our entire team did. Really focusing on functional nutrition and female health specifically. So things like period repair, thyroid issues, reading labs, PCOS, etc. The J3U certification was in there. February 2023 to present, we hired our guy, Dom Kuza, who is someone who our team has had on retainer. We've met with him every week for almost 2 years now. And I gotta say, it's been the best 2 years of my life. And I like to think it's probably Dom's as well.
Has it been 2 years?
February, it'll be 2 years. Yeah.
It's definitely been in the best 2 years of his life. So.
He's like, who? Who said that? Um, but truly again, and it's not a cheap thing to just like have someone on retainer for that
No.
long. But it is truly like Tom's one of the smartest people I know. I've learned so much from him, and I was trying to like put into bullet points like the things we've learned from Dom, but I feel like it's so vast from like a communication perspective
As
to
well as
a like
Rings,
as well as what?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, yes. Um, to like functional health, and really there's been a ton that we've to systems, right? To even just like mindset
Yep.
in the where it has been tremendously helpful. And it's so helpful to just have someone who, hey, if we ever want to run a client situation by, we can, right? So that's been amazing. December 2023, we worked through the N1 Education Biomechanics Practical. So there we actually it's the biomechanics certification, and then we went out to Colorado for the weekend. Natalie, Andrea, myself, it was just the three of us at the time. That was really helpful in terms of just better understanding anatomy, biomechanics, exercise selection. It was really cool to just like be with those guys in person.
Mhm.
That was again something that definitely was not cheap at all, but it was so worth it. I'm really glad that we did that because I feel like it helps everyone's confidence and like, oh wow, I already know a lot more than I'm giving myself credit for. But also was really just like I feel like leaving that had such a good understanding of like why, like what are the goals when we're choosing an exercise, and it kind of like going alongside their program design stuff as well. Like it just really, really clarifies like why would I choose this movement? What are the things we need to achieve to get the stimulus we want within a training session? It really is helpful from a programming perspective. I think that once you understand like biomechanics and how to achieve the desired training stimulus, programming becomes so simple, like adjusting programming, putting a program together in the first place. Um, that was great. And then finally, since what, July 2024 till now, been working with Steve Hall once again. Really enjoyed my initial experience with Steve and wanted to really, again, like I just love the way he approached training and how in depth he was there, and wanted someone who would really get very hands on with my training. So, really, again, it's kind of been cool to, since we left off prior, kind of see like what he's learned, how he's grown, like how his approach to things have changed, and really like get his feedback on, hey, here's where we might want to add more volume or pull back, etc. Like how quickly should you be progressing? How hard should we push like week to week? And just how to be a good chap in general, you know. But that is where kind of the journey. Oh shit. And then there's prescript, right? So prescript level one, we started September. Really digging deeper into, I don't know, like almost like prehab, rehab. I don't necessarily want to say rehab, but like kind of solving,
Function.
like,
Not
yes, like
not functional, but function. Like biomechanical function, I would say.
almost like, I don't want to like say solving or like fixing
Yeah.
pain, but like
Moving
improving
better.
movement. Yeah, moving better, which oftentimes will result in like alleviating pain, alleviating a lot of issues, building more muscle tissue, but like using resistance training as the means to go about that. And again, just kind of a deeper dive into like I feel like previously, like again, like the N1 stuff is almost like muscle action, right? Like, okay, the bicep, this is what the long head of the bicep does. Here's how we train it to grow it. And then this more so being like muscle function, right? Where it's like, okay, this is what the long head of the bicep stabilizes if we're seeing this in the way the person moves. then this is probably what we want to address. So it's kind of like it's cool in that it's almost like the other side of that. Like I feel like a lot of what we learn from N1. Anyways, that is my spiel. What do you got?
I think there are a couple, we share a lot of like certifications, courses, and mentors, but we share a couple common threads I think that are important to touch on. And one of which is like I noticed in both of our journeys, there kind of was a turning point where we kind of left the certification and like moved more toward mentorship,
Yeah.
and I think that's a very normal evolution for coaches, as you continue, is like at first you're looking for all the answers and you're looking for like certifications and courses to give you the answers. It's like, oh, I mean, everyone's doing this course, like it's going to make me better. And then as you have time in the trenches, you quickly sort of start to really piece together like, oh, actually, it's not like what do I want to learn? It's who do I want to learn from? And I think that's an important evolution. And then the other, I would say, commonality or thing that I think we can both speak to a little bit here is um, a little bit less like that answer seeking. Like, I need to find someone that has all the answers and they're just going to tell me like what it is I'm missing. I'm looking for the silver bullet. Um, Evolving more into like, I need someone
So
or
how to
something
think.
that is going to teach me how to think, like a different way of thinking. And I think that's something that both N1 and Prescript do really well. That it's not just like, I did like the online N1 biomechanics course, but prior to going to the practical. So like, the course is like online. It's very much like an online course. It was helpful. It's a great reference. But then once you get to the practical, and then one thing that I'm really enjoying about Prescript is it's really a framework for like how to think and like how to think through these things and how to problem solve. Because as a coach, that's truly what you are. You are a problem
Right.
solver. Like people are coming to you for answers, and it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people think, and including myself when I started out, it's like, oh, like I'm the answer haver. Like that's my job. It's my job to know everything. And it's more like the skill set that you really need to develop is to learn how to think and how to problem solve and how to be resourceful. And I think we both have gotten so much more of that out of people that we have worked with. And I
Yeah.
include like the in-person biomechanics with N1 because that was in person. And then like Prescript, I will say like it's a course, like a 16-week certification course. However, it is very robust in what they offer, so like you got a weekly lecture, but then you also have like all of these like labs that you can go to and like ask questions and like forums and a community to bounce ideas off of as well. Um, so I think those 2 points were important
No, I think that's a really good point though to speak to that, just like or to illustrate that idea of not like just the solution, but actually teaching you
yes,
not the answer, but teaching you how to think, right? Like
yes,
N1 didn't give us here's the templates for here's like 5 training
right.
program templates to just pull your clients into. They showed us, okay, if we want to really help this person grow their lats,
Mm,
very relevant to like Natalie with her small lats. Here's like the movements that might be most stimulative for that. Here's again like how we might sequence these like in a training day to make the most sense, right? So it's again then okay, then we need to take that and apply it. But it's again like yes, how to think rather than just do
yeah.
this.
And quite honestly, I think a lot of our clients can attest to this as well. That's also very similar to how we coach. So,
We
I
only
mean,
speak in riddles.
right. I'm here to educate and empower my clients for sure. And like I do have information and knowledge that they don't have. That's why they came to me. But a lot of it is really like, how can we lead the client to the right answer for them? And that's where like kind of the collaborative and the actual coaching comes in. And like I was saying before, I think a lot of people's perception of what a coach is like, I'm just the answer haver. I'm the
Right.
person that just like spits out the information. And like it's not really what coaching is. Like you need that information, but that's not the art of coaching. Um, all the more reason that you need to hire your own coach so that you can experience this and be on the receiving end yourself. So anyways, my journey is very different. I think
You organize yours a lot better than mine. Looking back on this, I'm like that could have
I
been so
love
much
some
more
bullets.
succinct.
Love it.
Yes, well done.
I'm gonna like blaze through this. Because I don't know. I mean, some of it is kind of like we overlap so many places, specifically with CrossFit. Just kidding. But I
Oh
did start out,
God, can you imagine?
I imagine it all the time, and it never ceases to bring me to tears of laughter. That's what we're planning for our team meetup in January. We'll be attending a CrossFit class.
Your MIS gonna break something. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, no, I have a CrossFit background and I was certified to coach CrossFit. So I actually still have my level 2, I think, CrossFit
Let's go.
certification. I don't
All
know.
right.
So yeah, I'm now accepting CrossFit clients.
That is exactly what I was gonna say. That's weird.
Um, But the important thing here, though, is that those certifications are really funny because anyone can just like pay CrossFit to show up and take this course and like and get their and be like legally able to coach CrossFit. But then of course it's not necessarily the certs that you do. It's like what do you do with those certs and how do you apply them? So I've worked at like 3 different CrossFit gyms. And the important thing there is like I got to see a lot of bodies move. And this is that whole like, hey, have you ever trained people in person? It's like I have worked with so many bodies. And so many different types of bodies trying to do some very advanced skills. And for anyone who is looking to make a move into the coaching space and certainly the online space, I think both of us would say like, yo, if you've never worked with people in person, that's I would recommend doing so. And then within that, I also did do like PTs and I did like small group classes. I coached a small group like personal training class one time that was like specifically geared towards hypertrophy, which like I really enjoyed that. Um, I did get my ISA, my ISSA, which is kind of like the NASM counterpart sort of thing. And it was so silly because like I did the fast track because I was like, well, if I'm gonna do this, like I gotta have something. And I did the fast track and I was like, okay. Like that was literally a box ticked. Like I can't tell you one thing I actually took from that course. In fact, there were so many things that I was like, that's not correct. I was like, I don't think that's true. And but in any case, I think I still have that. I'm not sure. Actually, I should check. I did precision nutrition like you did, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier. There was like the CrossFit coaching years, which I kind of touched on. I actually joined a team under Adam Wright, if anyone knows that name. He's like a really big TikToker. He's like a really big Instagram and TikTok presence. And like I still adore Adam. Like he's still a very good friend of mine. But like I think the interesting thing here is this is where I became really like specifically interested in hypertrophy, like versus CrossFit style of training. And I started to like train clients online, like in the gym space, like using machines and not just barbells and things like that. And I wanted to learn from Adam, and I wanted to be on a team. And I know like we touched on this in our part 1 episode of like the perks of joining a team. Like I wanted that because I'm someone who I come from a classical music background where like all I ever did was hire teachers to teach me. And so that's kind of how I have pursued anything, honestly, in life. And made pretty fast tracks. I was like, I'm just gonna find someone that's doing what I want to do and like align myself with them and I'm gonna learn. And so so I was super stoked to join Adam's team and like learn from him and then also learn from like the other coaches on the team at the time. This was like peak COVID also. Um, I've had a whole slew of like nutrition coaches, starting with like Nick Shaw of RP Strength. I
That's
mean,
crazy to me now that he was your coach.
I know. I like something I kind of like forget about because it was so long ago. I worked with Nick twice and like love the guy. I swear, like, and I was living in Hong Kong at the time too. And I would get emails back from him so quickly. And I was like, how are you awake? There would be like a 13-hour time difference. And I think he's in like North Carolina or something like that. And I'm like, how are you doing this? But cool. I appreciated it. Um, but like so yeah, I worked with Nick, and actually simultaneously I was at a strength and conditioning facility in Hong Kong. And I mentioned this last time, but my coach was there, like was a trainer at this facility, but he programmed for me. Like he didn't like I didn't do in-person sessions with him every week. It's like he wrote my program and then I would like I would send him training videos because he wasn't always there because it wasn't in person. So it was kind of like an on-site remote training situation. But it was actually a really unique relationship because like we did have an in-person relationship and like, yeah, so that
That
was,
was cool.
yeah, it was. And I was like on the competitive track there with CrossFit. So I was like all up in that space. But that was cool. And then, and I will give him a shout out because like he was a really important person in my life. Ant Haynes, of like Hong Kong CrossFit fame. And then I actually also worked with like another coach that used to coach at that strength and facility gym, and he moved to the UK. He moved on. By the time I left Hong Kong, I had really hurt my back and I needed someone to help me fix it. So I hired him and he was doing my training, not nutrition at the time, but just training. And then eventually hired another nutrition coach who I've talked about before. Her name was Hannah. And she was the one that really made things click for me in terms of like education. Like, oh, I get how this works now. Like I understand like calorie manipulation and all of that. Um, so like again, I've had so many coaches. And then when I hired Jeremiah, that was for like coaching and mentorship. And that was something where, I remember I remember like seeing his Instagram story. I was a podcast listener and I saw your story and you were promoting like the at the time mentorship course. And you kind of like hit me where it hurt the most. And it was like, are you, a nutrition
You
coach?
have really small lads.
No, actually my notes here say like the worst with the smallest lats, you.
Thank
Um,
you.
but no, you had a story that really just like hit me where it hurt the most, which is like, do you like lose sleep at night, wondering if you're going to be able to help your clients? And I was like, oh my God, that's me. And so I randomly did reach out and I was like, I think, you might be talking to me. And long story short, I hired you as a coach and mentor. Um, and that was big from a coaching perspective. Like I had never had such a high touch coaching experience.
Metaphorically,
Yes, only metaphorically. But
very
then
important part of
also
coaching.
also from a systems perspective. So like, the way that you delivered client programming and information was like really huge for me. And like I remember that's one of the first things we worked on together. You were like, get everyone into these systems, like I'm going to hold you accountable. I want it done by this time. And I was like, okay, we're like not messing around. So that was pretty transformative and then we parted ways and never spoke again. I also worked with a coach after that I'm not gonna name, but it was not a positive experience. And kind of like what you were saying before, that was just as important an
Oh,
experience as
yeah.
all the good experiences that I've had. Like I, first of all, like I'm still my average is still really my batting average is great for the people that I've hired. So I've had amazing mentors, leaders, coaches, experiences. So, one that maybe wasn't the best in the mix is like still a pretty good average, but I learned just as much about like, yeah, that I am not going to do that. Like, and I also learned other things like, wow, I do this better. I actually am pretty decent at this, so it was like kind of a big confidence builder as well, which was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and then, like fast forward and I'm like skipping over a lot of details at this point. But then, like I work with Dom Kuza now, who's also our team's mentor. I've been with him like over a year. And I find that that's been a really unique experience to have him client side as well as mentorship side. So like I really get this like robust Dom Kuza experience. Like
The experience we all want.
truly. But it's really cool to like see how he coaches me, but then see how he coaches other people as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of a really unique experience. Um, I think one could argue like, oh, I want to learn from as many different people as possible. Like maybe you want a different coach and a different mentor. And like I think that's valuable as well. But I also think it is unique and interesting to like have both of those perspectives. And I enjoy it a lot. Um, I also recently hired Nick Ridpath from Prescript. And has been really instrumental in helping me like rehab some shoulder stuff I have going on, but also kind of tangentially working through the Prescript course. It's like just been an add-on to that in a lot of ways. So how I mentioned earlier, how is like they really kind of help you learn how to think about things differently. Working with Nick has been like really helpful in that way. And he is very much one of those coaches where, like I send him all my training videos and like, talk about like, well, why aren't we doing this? And why aren't we doing this? And he's one of those guys that always coaches me through finding the answer.
Hmm.
He rarely just kind of like spoon feeds me like, oh, well, this is why. I mean, sometimes I need that for sure. But a lot of times he's like, okay, so why would we be doing this? Like, why do you think, and kind of helps me get there, which helps me learn better. So that's been a really cool addition to like the Natalie Care team, as I like to say. I really kind of like having, and he's a trainer at my gym. So I like, there's an in-person element there. But I did hire him really as a movement coach, but he's like, "Oh yeah, like just come to me with any questions. It's fine. That's what I'm here for." I'm like, "Okay."
That's cool. Yeah.
He totally regrets that. He rused the day. But no, he's been really awesome to work with. And then of course, like all of my like posing coaches, I have like 3 at this point or something. But I remember when I decided that I wanted to start like thinking about competing, which again was like a year and a half or so ago, I immediately hired a posing coach. Like again, like this is what I keep saying. It's like every time I want to learn something, that's like my go-to. I'm like, oh, this is the fast track there. Like I'm not gonna struggle by myself. I'm gonna have someone get me there. So yeah, I mean, and then like all of the courses that you mentioned, Jason Theobald, Dom, yeah, Prescript N1. Hopefully that's enough of an overview there. But that's
I think it
it.
was a really good summary. I also like the point about you mentioned like not having the best experience with the coach. And I'll agree though, there have been like there's a lot of experiences where it was I've had really, really a lot of very positive experiences. Like only have good things to say about everyone that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, but there's always like again, there were some experiences where it was like hey, just as much what I learned here as like what I and again not like within in those instances that I mentioned, but there have been experiences that I didn't chat about where it's like, hey, what I took from this is how I don't want to show up as a coach.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person who's talking about how great they are online, how much they care about their clients, then actually like doesn't pay attention or give a shit at all once we actually start working together, right? I don't want there to be a disconnect between how I seem and how I am in reality. Um,
I, I think it's important too, like, I know that I feel like we've just been giving so many shout outs. We're like, oh, love Dom, love Nick, love all these people. And like, we do like, love these people, but like, the more people you learn from along the way, like no one's perfect. So there,
yes,
there are going to be certain things that, you're like, I mean, I love this dude. Like I love this experience. Maybe I don't agree with like how they execute X, Y, or Z or like their systems or like whatever.
hmm,
Like so there's no perfect anyone. But it's kind of like you collect along the way. Like here are the things that I
right,
like that like I want to take from them
yes,
and make my own, and I'm going to leave these other things. And that's like over time how you develop your coaching and your coaching personality. Um, so thinking critically. I think it's really normal to start with a coach and you kind of have rose-colored glasses and it's like, oh, everything is like sunshine and rainbows, and then like it's like any relationship, you're with someone longer, you start to see like some of the cracks and you're kind of like, well, but understanding of course that like no one's perfect, but like, hey, like these are the things that I truly love about this experience and want to incorporate into my own. But like, hey, maybe these other things like don't work for me or they don't work with my client base and like
right,
the type of client that we serve or something like that. So for example, like, a lot of us have worked with like bodybuilding coaches, some of that is very relevant, obviously, like training and nutrition, like building jacked bodies, but some of it's not relevant. Okay.
Unless you want to talk about PEDs, then it might be. I'm just joking. We're not our
Yeah,
realm.
any of my clients, are you interested? I'm just
No,
kidding.
this
Just kidding.
is we're not actually.
No.
Anyways, unless you want to talk about it. So finally, to kind of wrap things up here, any other, I guess before I get at my spiel to conclude, anything else you wanted to add there?
I think those were all the points I wanted to make, but I do hope that one thing that is clear is like how long you've been in the space and it's taken you to get where you are. Um, and also how between the two of us, like how many people we have worked with, people we've learned from, and courses like it's and the experiences we've had in terms of like in-person training and all of that. I hope those are some of the big takeaways, and like also the fact that as a team as well as individuals, we're constantly investing. And I know like we made a big do about this on the last episode and you touched on it today, but we've both just like dropped money we didn't have like
Hmm.
on some of these things because I think we recognized very early on that these were investments.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to like, that's not financial advice. And
Please
it's, I,
don't come to me for that.
but and I will say like, that really ties into my concluding thoughts with a lot of coaches that I chat with want to be a very valuable coach. They want clients who see the value in them and are frustrated because clients don't seem to. And it's like, are you really that valuable yet? Right? Like, think about the person in any other profession who you are willing to pay well. It's because they develop mastery at a thing. Or else they're really, really good at marketing sometimes. But normally it's like the product is generally very great. It has been like honed. They probably spent a long time kind of mastering this. And I think that it's just so important to be focused on that like coaching mastery. Understanding it is going to take a long time, it is going to take a lot of reps. You're not going to be there at year one, you're not going to be there at year five. Uh, I feel like really the last like couple years is when I'm finally like really kind of coming into my own. And I feel, and I'm sure looking back a year or two from now, I'll be like, man, I sucked. All right. There was so much more that I could have learned. It's funny to talk through even like where we were in like 2021 and you like talking about like our systems and like things I was teaching you and like thinking about that. It's like, oh man, like it's funny how we've completely changed all of that now.
Yeah.
Um, but to get to where you want to be, if you want to be an incredible coach, again, if you want to be a valuable coach, you want to be paid well, it's not going to happen by just sitting on your hands. And I do think this is like a challenge that comes up with there, like being such a low barrier to entry to start coaching, where you might be stuck where I was when I first started, where it's like, I understand calorie deficits. So I'm like the smartest person. Like, I know everything about nutrition, right? Where there's still this whole new world that sometimes you need your eyes actually opened up to. But there is quite literally a price to pay to get here, be it either time or money. Like it's been, man, there hasn't been a month since early 2018 that I haven't been paying at least $1,000 for mentorship, not to consider like coaching and all the other things that we're paying for alongside that, right? Or man, like over the last like 2018 till now, I know it's over like 250 grand we've invested in like our education growing like for myself and for the team. And it's not like I don't like to normally like talk about numbers because I don't want to just like flex on that. But I think it's important to understand, not to say like, yeah, sell your house or I don't know what you, I guess like however you want to, it's not to say like you just need to drop 250K right now or anything of the sort. Like be judicious, yes, with how you spend, but understanding like it's not just like I'm gonna listen to a couple of podcasts, follow a few people on Instagram, and I will be masterful at this. Like truly the people who are the best coaches in the space. And like our goal is to be the best in the space. Okay, so how do we need to act? How do we need to invest in ourselves to get there? If we were already there, like how would we be acting? Like that's something I always like to ask myself. Would we be like, I don't know if I want to spend like a couple $100 on that this month, right? Like I'd rather like just have that in my bank account. No, like if this is what's gonna help us grow and get there, cool. I'm happy to. But I think that is something that holds back a lot of people. Um,
I
but
want
if
to
you
add one a point because like I think I just thought of this and I think it's important. So you and I like we have like a Rolodex of mentors and it's which is awesome because it's like how we've been able to expand our network. Um However, like that really was stretched out for both of us like over the course of years. So this isn't to say hey, you just need to go like drop all this money and hire all of these people. Like you need, you need a movement coach, you need a like a nutrition coach, you need a mentor, you need that's not really what we're saying. Like start if you're starting out, like start with like one person, find like one coach to invest in. And like anything, you can scale from there, right? So like when I started my own like nutrition business, it was just me and like I just hired a mentor. Okay,
Right.
I had a nutrition coach too. Okay, so
Right.
I did. I had multiple coaches at the time. However, but you get what I mean. It's like the whole point here wasn't to be like, look at all these people we like learn from. It's like, no, no, no. This was over the course of years. But the concept is like continually investing in yourself. So like this is a great starting point. So if you this is something you're not doing, but you're a newer coach and are interested in the space, this is a great starting point.
Absolutely. And really, I mean, even if you are truly in a place where you can't afford to invest in yourself, like there are tons of great for your resources out there. It's just like constantly focusing on mastery, constantly focusing on growing. I think that's the biggest thing is if your clients are struggling, unless you truly like, man, I don't have a single client situation that I don't want to feel supremely confident in being able to manage. Cool, we can grow, we can get better, and like making sure we're always analyzing not just like, oh, my clients suck. I just need better clients. But a lot of this is probably on us, right? How can we keep growing and improving? Um, yeah, I think those are my thoughts there. Anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Mm-mm.
Cool. Well, hopefully this listening to Natalie and I, mostly myself ramble, was helpful. If you want to apply for coaching, I am actually taking on still a couple more clients. I'm really looking for like more advanced, probably newer coaches, I would say, or more shit. You can be an advanced coach if you want as well. But looking to add a few more to my roster. Really, again, first time I've been taking on clients this last month. First time I've actively been taking on clients since 2022. So if you would like to work with me personally, you can click the link in the show notes to apply. You're welcome to shoot me a DM on Instagram if you prefer to chat there. But that's what we have for you for today. As always, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you all next time.